Welcome back to Mystery Minds, the channel where we dive into the darkest corners of true crime, uncovering stories that shock, intrigue, and leave us questioning the world around us. In today's case, we bring you a chilling and twisted tale, one of betrayal, deception, and a deadly obsession. This is the story of the deadly gift exchange. A tale of jealousy, greed, and calculated violence. This case will leave you wondering, what lengths will someone go to when their perfect life is on the line? And how could someone so close, someone you trust, become capable of such unspeakable acts? Stay with us as we unravel the dark and tragic story of the deadly gift exchange. Imagine this, a holiday gift exchange meant to spread cheer until a gift wrapped in green paper turns a festive celebration into a deadly nightmare. One employee, unsuspecting, opens a mysterious bottle, only to collapse seconds later. The room freezes, the holiday party turns into a crime scene. The deadly question echoes through the office, who in this room is the killer? The annual company Christmas party was in full swing, with the office decked out in sparkling lights, tinsel, and wreaths. The festive atmosphere was contagious as employees laughed and chatted, each enjoying the rare opportunity to unwind outside of work. The event was a tradition, one that everyone looked forward to each year. It was a time for coworkers to bond, share stories, and for some, even escape the pressure of their daily routines. The aroma of mulled wine and freshly baked treats filled the air, while Christmas music softly played in the background. Among the crowd was Sarah, a young and ambitious marketing assistant. She had only been with the company for a year, but she had quickly made an impression with her dedication and sharp mind. Her colleagues admired her drive, but there was an undercurrent of envy, especially from Derek. Derek, a quiet accountant, was in his late 30s, and while he was good at his job, he had always flown under the radar. He watched Sarah with a mixture of admiration and growing resentment. She had recently been promoted to a position he had hoped for, and though he rarely expressed it, a part of him had begun to see her as a threat. As the party continued, the anticipation of the evening's main event and office gift exchange grew. This year, the game had been slightly altered to add some excitement. Everyone had drawn numbers from a hat earlier in the day, and the person with number 1 would choose a gift from the pile, while number 2 could either pick a new gift or steal the first person's gift. The game was always unpredictable, and it was the highlight of the evening. Sarah, who had drawn the final number, was particularly excited, as she had put a lot of thought into her gift, hoping it would surprise and delight the recipient. As the game began, the first few rounds went smoothly. Laughter erupted as employees tried to outsmart one another, choosing the most desirable gifts or strategically stealing the ones they wanted. Sarah's turn was finally approaching, and her heart raced with anticipation. She had been eagerly watching the others unwrap their gifts, and now it was her turn. She was ready to reveal her thoughtful present. When her number was called, she stood up and walked to the pile of gifts. Her eyes scanned the neatly wrapped boxes, each with a colorful bow. She reached for the last gift on the table, a small, heavy box wrapped in deep green paper. It caught her attention immediately, and she couldn't help but wonder what was inside. The weight of it felt unusual, almost too heavy for something so small, and the corners of the wrapping were perfectly folded, giving it an air of mystery. She carefully untied the ribbon and peeled back the paper, revealing a delicate glass bottle inside. The liquid inside the bottle shimmered with a strange, dark hue. Sarah raised it to the light, intrigued. The room grew quieter as she examined the gift. There was something captivating about it, but she couldn't quite place it. The shape of the bottle was elegant, almost artistic, and it looked like something that might be found in an antique shop. She held it up, her eyes scanning the room for the giver, but no one seemed to be paying her special attention. Without thinking much of it, Sarah brought the bottle to her nose. The faintest scent wafted up to her nostrils, but before she could even process what it was, her legs buckled beneath her. She fell to the ground in a sudden, violent collapse, her body twitching uncontrollably. Her colleagues froze in horror as Sarah's body lay motionless, the glass bottle rolling away from her. The once cheerful room was now filled with panicked voices. Someone screamed for help, but it was already too late. The office, which had been alive with the sound of laughter and holiday cheer, was now eerily silent. The Christmas party had turned into a nightmare, and no one knew what had just happened or who was responsible. The room was in chaos as Sarah lay on the floor, her body twitching uncontrollably. Employees rushed to her side, but it was clear something was terribly wrong. The air, once filled with festive chatter, now carried an overwhelming sense of dread. People shouted for someone to call an ambulance, but no one seemed to know what was happening. Some tried to comfort Sarah, but her eyes were vacant, her breath shallow and erratic. She didn't respond. The room felt suffocating as the shock began to set in. Among the crowd, Derek stood frozen, his eyes wide with disbelief. His pulse quickened as the weight of the situation hit him. He had been standing near Sarah when she opened the gift, and now he couldn't tear his gaze away from her lifeless form. The others seemed equally stunned, some crouching down beside her, others stepping back in confusion. The Christmas decorations, the laughter, the holiday spirit, all of it felt like a distant memory now. Tony, the office's procurement manager, was the first to react with a sense of urgency. He rushed to the door and shouted for someone to get help. But it didn't take long for the police to arrive, followed by paramedics, who quickly took over. Sarah was rushed to the hospital, but by that time it was clear she was already fighting for her life. The liquid in the bottle had done its work, whatever it was. It had quickly paralyzed her, cutting her off from the world around her. The employees were ordered to stay in the office building, and the police began to ask questions. It was no longer a medical emergency, it had become a crime scene. Everyone had witnessed Sarah's collapse, but no one had seen who had given her the poison gift. The whole situation was too strange, too surreal. Was it a tragic accident, or was there something more sinister at play? The police officer in charge, Detective Harris, gathered the employees in the break room. His eyes scanned the crowd as he began to speak, his voice calm but firm. He explained that they would need to question everyone individually and that no one was allowed to leave until they had more information. The room fell silent as the weight of the moment set in. Who in this room could be responsible? Who would want to hurt Sarah? The detectives began with a few basic questions, asking each person where they had been during the gift exchange and who had given them their gifts. The employees seemed unnerved, their answers coming quickly but nervously. There were no clear signs of foul play, no arguments, no suspicious interactions. But one thing was certain, someone in that room had put the deadly toxin in the gift, and whoever it was, they had planned this. Derek's mind raced as he replayed the moments leading up to Sarah's collapse. He couldn't stop thinking about the gift. The bottle had been so perfectly wrapped, so out of place amidst the usual joke gifts and knick-knacks that had filled the earlier rounds of the exchange. Had Sarah's gift been the only one like that? Had anyone else noticed anything strange about it? The investigators turned their attention to the gift itself. They carefully examined the glass bottle, noting the elegant shape and the dark liquid inside. There was no label, no indication of what the substance might be. The toxin was so potent that Sarah hadn't even had a chance to react before it overwhelmed her. As the hours passed, the tension in the room grew. Each person was beginning to feel the weight of suspicion. Could someone in the office have a motive to harm Sarah? Was Derek, who had always seemed so quiet and withdrawn, hiding something? Or was it Mia, the head of human resources, whose position had recently come under scrutiny due to some unspoken tension in the office? The gift exchange had started as a celebration, but now it felt like a twisted game of survival, and no one knew who to trust. The police decided to start reviewing the office's security footage, hoping to find something that would provide a clue about who had handled the gift. As the screen flickered to life, the employees held their breath, waiting for any hint of who might be behind the deadly act. But what they saw only deepened the mystery. The security footage played on the screen in the dimly lit break room, and the tension was palpable. Everyone stood in uneasy silence, watching as the camera captured the moments of the gift exchange. It was a blur of faces, wrapped gifts, and shifting movements, but nothing stood out at first. The footage showed the group mingling and laughing, exchanging presents, but there were no obvious signs of foul play. As the detectives rewound the footage and slowed it down, the room seemed to hold its breath. They watched the sequence again, focusing on Sarah's turn. There she was, confidently walking toward the gift table, her eyes scanning the wrapped boxes. She took her time, clearly enjoying the moment, before reaching for the small, heavy package that had caught her eye. The footage showed her carefully unwrapping the gift, her curiosity piqued by its unusual weight. It was a moment of simple excitement, nothing more. But then came the bottle, the deadly bottle that would change everything. The detective zoomed in, analyzing every detail. There were no suspicious exchanges, no one acting out of the ordinary. The footage didn't reveal who had placed the poisoned gift in the pile, but something about it felt wrong. There was an eerie sense of fate about the moment, as if the bottle had been waiting for Sarah all along. The investigators scrolled back through the footage, checking each person's movements. No one appeared to have acted suspiciously, yet Sarah had been the only one affected. Had someone slipped the toxin into the bottle at the last minute, or had it been carefully planned from the start? The questions piled up with no answers. Meanwhile, the employees sat, their nerves frayed, as they anxiously awaited the results of the investigation. It didn't take long for suspicions to form. Derek, standing in the back of the room, kept his gaze fixed on the screen. His mind was racing. He had been standing close to Sarah when she opened the gift, and he had seen her reaction. But there had been nothing unusual, nothing that would have made him suspect what was inside. And yet, the bottle hadn't just been a gift. It had been a weapon. Derek couldn't shake the feeling that someone in the room had known exactly what they were doing. The question gnawed at him. Who could be capable of such a thing? Mia, the head of human resources, was also on edge. She had been the one to organize the party, and the gift exchange had been her idea. But in recent months, Mia had been caught up in a tense, secret affair with the CEO, a fact that had become an open secret within the office. Sarah's recent promotion had complicated things for Mia. The younger woman had been gaining influence, and Mia's jealousy had been growing. It was a theory that seemed to make sense. Sarah had always been the one to outshine her, the one who had received the recognition Mia thought she deserved. Could that have been enough to push Mia over the edge? Was Sarah's success the final straw for someone desperate to maintain control? The detectives didn't overlook the possibility that someone else might have had a motive. They turned their attention to the procurement manager, Tony, whose demeanor had shifted once the investigation began. Tony had always been a quiet figure in the office, someone who preferred to stay out of the limelight. But his sudden fidgeting when the police arrived didn't go unnoticed. He had been responsible for handling the office's supplies, which meant he had access to everything from paperclips to chemicals. Could he have been the one to source the toxin that had been used in Sarah's gift? The detectives began to piece together the web of potential motives, but each one seemed to lead to another dead end. Derek's quiet resentment of Sarah for her promotion, Mia's jealousy and hidden relationships, Tony's access to the office's supply orders, all of them had reasons to be involved. But who could have actually gone so far as to orchestrate the attack? As the night wore on, the sense of unease grew thicker. The police worked quickly to identify the toxic substance in the bottle, but the hours dragged on with no clear answers. It was then that they uncovered something unexpected. The toxin used in the bottle wasn't just any poison. It was a rare substance, one that could only be manufactured by a select few suppliers. This new discovery shifted the investigation into a more dangerous direction. Whoever had poisoned Sarah had carefully chosen the toxin, knowing exactly what it would do and, more importantly, where to get it. The question now wasn't just who had done it, it was how long they had been planning this act. As the investigation progressed, it became clear that the path to uncovering the identity of Sarah's attacker was filled with more questions than answers. The rare toxin used in the bottle was a breakthrough, but it didn't make things any easier. In fact, it only complicated matters. The substance was so specific, it could only be produced by a handful of suppliers with access to highly regulated chemicals. The list of potential suspects narrowed, but it still left the police with the daunting task of determining who in the office had the knowledge and means to acquire it. Detective Harris, unable to ignore the growing web of connections and suspicions among the employees, decided to dig deeper into their personal lives. He began by looking into Sarah's recent promotion. Her rise through the company had been swift, and it wasn't lost on the detectives that such rapid success could breed resentment. Among those who seemed to take issue with Sarah's new role was Derek, the quiet accountant. His jealousy, although subtle, had been noticeable in the weeks leading up to the party. He had long been hoping for that very promotion, and when it was given to Sarah instead, his frustration was apparent. But was his resentment strong enough to drive him to murder? While Derek's jealousy was undeniable, there was another layer to the story. Mia, the head of human resources, had more to gain from Sarah's downfall than anyone had initially realized. The investigators uncovered details of a secret affair between Mia and the company's CEO. This affair had been an open secret in the office, and it was no surprise that Sarah, being the go-getter she was, had begun to threaten Mia's position. The promotion had put Sarah in a more powerful role, one that would give her a say in the very future of the company. But it wasn't just her career that had made Mia uneasy. Mia had been struggling with her own insecurities. Sarah's confident, charismatic personality had been a constant reminder of Mia's fears that she was losing control of her personal and professional life. Could Mia have been driven by jealousy to the point of poisoning Sarah in a bid to eliminate the threat? The more the detectives dug into Mia's background, the more they discovered a trail of secrecy. Mia had been known to have a sharp temper, and she had a reputation for being cutthroat when it came to her position in the company. The thought that someone so close to Sarah could harbor such deep resentment was chilling. But Mia's relationship with the CEO complicated matters. Was she protecting herself from exposure, or was there a darker motive behind her actions? The investigation took an unexpected turn when they looked into Tony, the office's procurement manager. Tony had always kept a low profile, but now he seemed to be an increasingly likely suspect. He had the opportunity to source the rare toxin, given his responsibility for purchasing supplies. Tony's role in the company gave him access to all kinds of materials, from everyday office items to more dangerous substances. The detectives learned that Tony had been quietly resentful of the growing competition within the company, especially from Sarah. He had been overlooked for promotions in favor of younger, more ambitious employees. The thought of being passed over again, especially when Sarah's promotion seemed to overshadow his own achievements, weighed heavily on him. Was Tony so consumed by his bitterness that he would go so far as to plan Sarah's death? As the web of suspicion continued to tighten, the detectives realized that the truth might be even more complex than they had imagined. Each suspect, Derek, Mia, and Tony had their own motivations, their own reasons for wanting to get rid of Sarah. But the more they investigated, the more they found themselves caught in a tangled mess of deceit, jealousy, and personal ambition. Could one of them really have been capable of such a cold-blooded act? The final clue came when the investigators uncovered a detail that no one had noticed before, a peculiar, almost unnoticeable detail in the security footage from the party. Just before Sarah collapsed, they caught a brief glimpse of someone in the background, moving swiftly and deliberately toward the table where the gifts were. The figure's face was obscured, but the movement was unmistakable. Someone had been there, and they had made sure that Sarah's gift contained the deadly toxin. The question now wasn't just who the person was, it was why they had been so determined to see this through. The investigation reached a boiling point as Detective Harris and his team analyzed the new piece of footage that had surfaced. The grainy image revealed a fleeting shadow moving toward the gift table right before Sarah opened her present. The person's face was obscured, but the figure's precise, deliberate movements couldn't be ignored. It was clear that whoever was responsible had taken great care in ensuring Sarah received the deadly gift. The detectives knew that this brief, almost imperceptible moment could be the key to unlocking the entire mystery. The team worked tirelessly to enhance the footage, narrowing down the potential suspects. The figure seemed to be wearing a coat, but the details were too blurry to make an identification. The more they watched, the more they realized how carefully this person had planned their actions. It wasn't an impulsive act, it was calculated. But who could it be? The list of potential suspects had narrowed, but there were still too many questions left unanswered. As the pressure mounted, Detective Harris made the decision to focus on the relationships between the employees. It was clear that the office environment had been a breeding ground for jealousy and rivalry. Sarah's promotion had created a ripple effect among her colleagues, and everyone seemed to have a reason to resent her. Derek had his quiet jealousy, Mia had her personal insecurities, and Tony had been passed over time and time again. But none of them seemed to have the motive to take it to this extreme until the detectives uncovered something that sent a chill down their spines. They discovered that Mia had recently begun a secret campaign to sabotage Sarah's career. The motive was far deeper than professional jealousy. Mia had been using her position as head of human resources to leak information about Sarah's work to the CEO, painting her as incompetent and unreliable. Mia had hoped to undermine Sarah's standing in the company, and when that failed, she had resorted to more drastic measures. The investigators also learned that Mia had become more erratic in the weeks leading up to the party, her behavior growing increasingly hostile towards Sarah. It seemed like the perfect storm for a dangerous act. But there was still something that didn't add up. If Mia was behind it, why had she gone to such lengths to make it look like an accident? Why not make her move more directly, without the risk of being caught on camera? Detective Harris considered this, his mind racing through the possibilities. It was then that a breakthrough came when they discovered Tony's involvement in the office's chemical supplies. Tony, with his quiet demeanor and role in procurement, had been the one with the access to the rare toxin used in the bottle. He had been ordering chemicals for months, and there had been a few suspiciously large orders that hadn't raised any red flags at the time. As the investigators pieced together this new information, a chilling theory began to take shape. Mia had orchestrated the attack, but she hadn't acted alone. Tony, with his bitterness towards Sarah, had been the one to obtain the toxin. He had used his position to secure it, knowing that no one would suspect him. Together, they had concocted a plan to remove Sarah from the equation once and for all. Mia, with her deep-seated resentment, had been the one to choose Sarah as the target, and Tony, with his quiet rage, had provided the means. The detectives now had enough evidence to make their move. They brought Mia and Tony in for questioning, presenting them with the new findings. Mia's demeanor faltered when confronted with the evidence of her manipulations, and she knew the game was up. Tony, however, seemed more composed, though his eyes betrayed a flicker of guilt. Both of them had played their parts, and both were about to be held accountable for the crime they had committed together. In the end, it was the toxic combination of jealousy, ambition, and betrayal that had led to Sarah's near-fatal poisoning. The holiday party, once a celebration of the season, had become the stage for a cold-blooded crime. But even as the culprits were taken away in handcuffs, the questions lingered. How many more were willing to go to such extremes to protect their secrets? And what would the company do now, knowing that such darkness had existed just beneath the surface of their festive celebrations? As the investigation came to a close, the employees were left to reflect on the chilling events that had unfolded right in front of them. The holidays would never feel the same again. The investigation into the deadly gift exchange left the office in shock, as a holiday tradition turned into a deadly game of secrets and betrayal. Tony, the unsuspecting figure in the corner, had used his position to orchestrate a fatal act of revenge. What drives someone to such extremes? And how could someone so close to you become your worst enemy? This is a chilling reminder of how dangerous the smallest actions can be when hidden behind a mask of trust. Thanks for joining us on this dark journey into the world of betrayal. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more true crime stories on Mystery Minds. Until next time, stay safe and stay vigilant.